And hello everyone. Welcome. I am your host Commander Yannick, and welcome to this Monday morning stream. Well, Monday afternoon in this time zone, I'm going to say. Yeah, and which time zone you may be throughout the world, welcome. Here today, we're in a very interesting location. There are many interesting locations in Elite, but this is quite a popular one. This is amongst the generation ship called Artemis. You probably got the idea of what's going to happen probably from the stream title, but here we are at the generation ship called Artemis. As many of these are sort of found through investigations, through following clues, usually from various sort of message beacons in different locations. It's in orbit of this fairly barren world. But the star it's in orbit of is Mu Cassiopeia, if memory serves correct. But you can see it's quite a similar design to most of the other generation ships, and its own little variations. But let's get a bit closer to see if we can actually get the scanners to work this time. Last time I tried this, it didn't quite work, and I thought maybe the whole thing had been shut down by Frontier and it wasn't active anymore, but apparently it was. And they tried again later, and it did actually work okay, so yeah, not so bad. Right, let's try the main core of the ship and scan that first and see what we can find. Get close, but not too close. How's everyone doing in the chat? Right, got the data link scanner ready. Okay. Right, this should reveal something. If all goes well. Sometimes it takes a little while to process it, but we should. Oh, there we are. I see on the scanner in the middle. The orange circular scanner, yeah, they've revealed some uplinks where we hopefully can find out some information as what happened to this ship, why it is where it is. For those of you aren't so sort of up on the lore of Elite, I think these generation ships were supposed to be almost totally sublight ships that left the solar system centuries previously, before hyperspace travel was possible. I think some of them were slightly faster than light, but not much. So it would still take literally years to traverse the stars. So I don't think I'm close enough to it. But yeah, whatever way they would, with a sublight or fast light, they would take years literally to get from one place to the other to their destination. Usually an Earth-like world in a distant system. But a lot of them didn't make it, and it's like one of these had never reached its destination. Let's interrogate the uplink to see what it has for us. Aha, it's a discovered log, similarly to the previous exploration camp and the INRA bases. Wolf in sheep's clothing, huh? Interesting. Looks like it's a series of logs to the different uplinks. I think, yeah, this sort of thing is obviously, you can tell by now, not really surprising in Elite. Here you go and scan an uplink or some kind of connector, and it gives you information about what's been going on. Pretty poor IT security in some ways, but I think some of these were obviously designed to be found. Some of them weren't. Like the INRA-based ones, I'm not sure they were supposed to be found. At least not all of them. The final ones, probably. Okay, that's the second one. I think these are like a series. I said 3 out of 4, so we've got a couple more to do. Let's do them in sequence to see how they intended us to find them. Past the the biodomes here. Looks like more of them on this than there are on some other generation ships I've seen. Just want to fly between parts of the ship without crashing into them, as you do. The uplinks in the middle there. I think I might be able to target it from here. No, apparently not. I need to be a bit closer than I actually am. Okay, that's not a problem. I'll get a little bit closer. Try now. Okay, excellent. Got 3 out of the 4 logs. 1 more to go. Yes. It's a good thing I just realised the screen logo is actually missing from the main broadcast. Oh dear. Naughty, naughty. I have to fix that very quickly. You've got to laugh at this. Oh, it's fine though. It's all good. I should be returned to the screen now, thankfully. That's better. Okay, the last uplink is over here. It's the other side of the ship. Yeah, these are quite long ships, aren't they? By any standards in the Elite, these are quite long ships. So obviously, you can't. It's not realistic to have a generation ship unless it is actually effing massive. So that you can obviously incorporate all the things you need for a community to survive literally years, decades of isolation. Okay, let's have a look what the logs, what story they have to tell us. Let me know if you can hear this properly in the sound and the stream, because yeah, say the sound levels in game aren't always what you think they are coming from my end. Well, let's see.
I thought this would be a new start. I thought coming out here things would be different, but now after this I see that nothing has changed. People lie and other people just pay the cost. It seems like someone smuggled an illegal animal on board. A dog. They've been keeping it in one of the storage pods, stealing food for it from one of the kitchens. But it looks like that wasn't enough. By what we can piece together, the dog got out somehow and killed a bunch of people. I mean, a real mess. Bite and claw marks all over the bodies. Bite marks on the walls, on the doors, even on the airlocks. The only thing is, it was found exactly where they'd been keeping it all along. I mean, there wasn't a drop of blood on this thing. If you ask me, this dog didn't seem like the killing type. Well, that didn't stop them from destroying it. I asked the captain to keep the case open, to let me investigate, but no dice. He just saw it as open and shut. I can't shake the feeling that there's something we're missing here.
What sheep they are, these fools of man. How they prance and bleat, knowing nothing of the true nature of things. Blind sheep following blind shepherds. I have been sent as a wolf amongst this flock to teach them the meaning of their existence. They are nothing. Sacks of flesh flung out into the cosmos to spread their seed. Uncaring children ejected from an uncaring womb. Spreading like a disease, infecting all they touch. So soon, all will bleat as they do. They take only the choicest, this flock, cast down those that will not follow their sightless herders to nothing. They prey on the weak for their own gains, while they preach about unity and togetherness. They shall be snatched, they shall be scattered, they shall be ravaged.
The plot thickens.
The shepherds hunt, but see nothing. They scuttle and scurry and gather their precious flocks to them, but they cannot protect them. I have opened so many eyes to the ways of things, and still they do not see. I have opened them up to new ways, to see what's inside, but they refuse to heed the lesson. What arrogance they show, as if this was all made for them. What gives this virus that is mankind the right to infect the cosmos?
Final part.
The sheep lay out their sacrifices. They think that will sate the wolf's hunger. They do not see the wolf hunts not for hunger. They are blinded by the lies they tell themselves, the lies that tie the fabric of their tiny little world together. But the cord frays and will snap. The lesson must be repeated. Until the baying falls silent.
And there you go. Not 100% clear exactly what happened, but you can deduce a few things. From the ship being in its abandoned state here, they were either killed by that guy, or they fled the abandoned ship because of it. Yeah, I do love the atmosphere of the way the voice acting is. It adds so much of multi-dimensional sort of, perspective to the story. I mean, you just read its text there on the screen, and it's interesting, but it's just not as interesting as someone acting it out. Also, with the sound effects in the background, adds that sort of word verisimilitude. I think the trying to add sort of details that make it feel more realistic, like it's something that's actually there. But yeah, I think most of these the stories of these mega ships do kind of end in, at least the ones that you sort of scan here and what have you, tend to end in some kind of disaster, tragedy. There are a couple of exceptions, I think. But yeah, those are the exceptions to the rule. But obviously, by the law, there are these whole sort of swathes of mega ships, generation ships that were sent into the black, and nothing has been heard from. They've not even been discovered. Some of them obviously failed. Some of them probably just still out there, ploughing their particular furrow between the stars. And space is big. This is the thing. Interstellar space is almost unimaginably big. It doesn't even start to scratch the surface with the space between galaxies, but we'll stick to the space between the stars and the arms of the galaxy first, because that seems a bit more in perspective, especially in Elite. It seems a bit more in perspective. But here, yes, this particular ship. The Artemis is not found that far from the bubble. I think it's slightly within the bubble where Mukasey appear. But yeah, it is in orbit of this fairly ordinary world. And that's a quite dim star as well, which doesn't light this place up particularly brightly. But you can see the rest of the stars quite clearly here, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I would like there to be more of these kind of stories in the game. I know obviously it's not the work of a moment. They have to obviously like write these little short stories and then get people to sort of act on what have you. But I'm sure it's you know, you could do quite a lot of these quite quickly without too much of a problem. It would be a very good way of creating more intrigue and suspense in the game. There have been obviously some rumours recently that there are going to be some more of these megaship stories, because it's appeared within the game's internal Galnet news service, which I'll just quickly go to, because say the Frontier don't tend to put stuff in that usually without reason, at least not in recent times anyway. Sometimes in the past Galnet used to have very sort of rich storytelling, and that then faded away for a long time, but now it seems to have come back again. Wedding of Hadrian Duval. No, that is not what we were looking for. Here we are. The Galactic Mysteries of Generation Ships. Yeah, this is an interesting quote here from Galnet. Generation ships are essentially mobile cities designed to carry expanding populations. Always an impressive sight. One I keep returning to, the thesis is orbiting Nephirim 6A, which we were at the thesis the other day actually in the stream. So that was interesting. I didn't actually know this Galnet article existed when I was doing that, but it's an interesting coincidence. Maybe it is a hint that there are going to be more of these stories, or maybe it is just Frontier trying to bring attention to these sort of established but nonetheless interesting aspects of the game. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else relating to generation ships in Galnet recently, but that is interesting in the fact that we may be seeing more of them in the near future. Well, at least I hope so. I mean, that would certainly be a good way of adding more content to the game, because obviously even though the Odyssey update is going to come soon, it's not coming just yet. We're still in the alpha phase. That'll take a while before it's sort of settled, and then the final version is actually put out. Hopefully not too long though, like a few months from now I think. I mean, by the middle of the year we should have the full Odyssey release. Cross my fingers and say that and all things go according to plan. Yeah, it's interesting that some bits of the station rotate and others do not in different mega ships. See, yeah, this part is rotating. Artificial gravity generation by centrifugal forces. But on the other hand, these here, the biological domes, greenhouses if you will, are not. They're static. And it seems to be the case on all these generation ships as well. Like this part of the ship is completely static relative to the rest of it. That's one of the key things you always have to remember about space under any circumstances. Everything is relative, usually to something else. There's no really absolutes. It's always like relative to the planet, relative to the star, relative to the ship or a part of the ship, relative to something else, That's the way you sort of work out proximity of things to other things, or the lack of proximity to things sometimes at great distances away, because space is great, space is vast. But yes, I would recommend, if you wanted to see some unusual places apart from things like the INRA bases, would be things like these. The generation ships are well worth checking out. The sound in the background of these, it's quite amazing. But yeah, there's a huge, not huge, but a fairly substantial sort of list of generation ships that exist. I think visiting another one today is an extremely good idea. Well, we're still on the subject, and I think people have started talking about this amongst the elite community once more. Mainly because of the Galnet article, not because I've been doing these streams. It's a good coincidence, though. I mean, sometimes that's just the way the cards fall, and it's yeah, just an intriguing coincidence more than anything else. As always, you know, Canon are a good source for bases and megaship details, generation ships in particular. They have their own megaship as well, the Canon organisation, the Gnosis. The thing is, for a while the Gnosis was sort of jumped from system to system on a sort of weekly basis, but now with the invention of fleet carriers, it's made sort of the Gnosis sort of largely redundant, and I think the Gnosis has actually now come to a final stop. I can't remember where it was. I think it might be the home system of the Canon organisation, but that makes sense, that, doesn't it? Right, so far, interesting places, interesting generation ships. Interestingly enough, could go to the Odysseus. That's definitely a good one. I'm going to go to one that I've never been to before, actually. Yeah, that seems wise. Something that is both alien to myself and to you guys out there as well, potentially. Maybe some of you guys might have seen it before as well, but yeah, it's always good to have a look. But it's usually, as you know, the generation. There is a sort of variation of the theme, but it's the stories of individual ships, and obviously like the voice logs, the key differences. Yeah, generation ship Phanes. That's assuming how you pronounce it. "101 light years," right? Yeah, that's relatively near. A couple of jumps, really. Let's see what there is out there. It's still mass locked. This is the thing, they're not insubstantial vessels. Yeah. I mean, you can get mass locked by a Type 9 or a cutter. That's the thing. It's again, it's sort of relative, isn't it? Like a station, you have to get a certain distance away from a generation ship or a fleet carrier because they're both mega ship size. And you want them on the mast. And then when your mass lock is gone, you can jump away free as a bird. Yeah, I think it's just a couple of jumps in this ship. Should be cool. Always scan wherever you are. And if you've been there before, I always scan things as a habit anyway. Just the basic sort of the advanced discovery scan. I always let that off. pretty much a reflex action by now, being an explorer. But yeah. Sometimes out there on expeditions I've taken with me the anti-Thargoid sort of shutdown shield, which basically stops my ship's internals from being disabled by the Thargoid shutdown field, which does happen when you want to scan your ship. Like your ship's basically dead in the water for however long it is, 30 seconds or so. You can literally do nothing. You can't maneuver, you can't fly around, you can't scan them, you can't. Literally, the entire ship is just dead in space for that time. But if you fire off the shutdown field before they actually put the shutdown field on you, yeah, then it's fine. Yeah, you can go about your business. It doesn't really make them very happy, but then again, yeah, sometimes just not happy full stop. Right, let's have a look at the system. The planet we are looking for is B5. Yes, this is the one. What I'm slightly surprised about is there are no fleet carriers nearby. This may be the first time. I hope I've got the system name right. Because I'm so used to seeing fleet carriers in the location of known sites, generation ships, service installations, engineer bases, etc., etc. Anything of interest in the system, really. Or even just high population systems. You often find that's the way. Yeah, it's the right system, alright. So, okay, let's get on. This one's a fair distance away, actually, from the start. Well, it'll give some chatting time anyway. So that's a good thing. I think one of the complaints about the taxi service in the Odyssey Alpha has been that in that system, the one system you're allowed to go to, that some of the places are quite far away, as in 100,000 plus light seconds, and it takes you about 15 minutes to get there. But I think because obviously you're not flying the spacecraft, it doesn't feel quite so interactive, and the people are sort of kind of bored by this. But that's why I say this is a good time to listen to a podcast or what have you, or maybe watch YouTube videos or listen to music. There's always ways that you can use the time productively, but I think some people have said that they would like that part of the game to be sped up, but that kind of defeats the point of an MMO, I would have thought. Isn't it supposed to be immersive within that universe? And just because you're a passenger in a ship why should the travel be any quicker than you are flying it? It doesn't make any sense, because basically it's the same if you were multi-crewing into a ship. It doesn't speed up then. The taxi service essentially is just like a more formalised multi-crew, where you pay for the service. Yeah, pretty much. It looks like they're sitting very similar sort of technology. Maybe they've just refined it a bit or just started from scratch and built a new one. But it is the same thing. You're sitting in not the pilot seat, but in another seat within the cabin. And you're travelling at the same rate, because otherwise, let's say if you were two people, one of them had left the same base at the same time, one was in a ship, one was in a taxi. The taxi one in-game then would get quicker if they sped the time up. So that would be almost like a cheat mode, wouldn't it? And for example, also another thing about keeping within the sort of lore of the sort of universe, if you actually want to... Pardon me a second. Sorry about that. So I was saying, within the in-game universe, if you actually get a ship delivered by an NPC from a distant station to where you are, that doesn't get any quicker either. That's actually probably even slower than piloting it yourself, but the point is it won't be any quicker than piloting it yourself. So if it takes, let's say, I don't know how many hours it is to get from Colonia, I think it's about 3 days or something. Yeah, the NPC takes to fly a ship from Colonia to the bubble. then it will take 3 days of game time, and you won't be able to access that ship for that time. So it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make a consistent universe otherwise. I understand, like, especially the first time you play it might be inconvenient, but there's other ways of using the time. Like at the moment, I'm not actually touching the controls because I pointed my ship towards my target. It's distant. There's not much I can do in terms of course correction, etc. This is actually purely on manual. I'm not on automatics at all. Not on Super Cruise Assist or anything. So, but this is what happens. The ship is stable. If you don't touch it, it will just fly in a straight line, which actually makes a lot of sense in space, especially if you're nowhere near the sort of center of gravity of a star system. You will just go straight. Sometimes you'll go on a curve if you're near a gravitational body, of course, but under these circumstances we're going in a straight line. But yeah, this is a fair amount of time. But it's not that long, it's like 12 minutes or something from the start of the count. I wasn't actually paying much attention to the actual countdown of this. But yeah, there's definitely always things that you could do. And yeah, I was slightly surprised by some of the sort of comments about the speeded up, because well, especially if you play the game for a while, it's like, they're always trying to maintain consistency within it. So it's nothing really new. Not that I'm having a go at anyone. I think I'm not. It's just, as with all opinions, it's good to debate and sort of evaluate them. But I mean, Frontier could do that, speed it up, but it wouldn't make much sense for sort of consistency. That's my opinion anyway. But no doubt you've all got your own. But yeah, at the moment, this thing is with these sorts of long transits between places, there's not that much you can really do. Apart from maybe have a look around the system and see what else is there. Like we're going to the B star. Yeah, there's something out there. But actually, what is that something? Oh, it's not explorable. Yeah. Shock horror. Yeah. Back on course. Yeah, it's I am hoping there is going to be at least another couple of generation ships, because I don't think it takes Frontier that long to put the content together, because obviously a lot of these generation ships are quite similar, but they're kind of modular. You add a certain number of rings, certain bits of design to it, and there aren't that many sort of unique features into it, so it's like you could bolt them together pretty quickly. It's just and then the voice acting takes a little bit. Obviously we have to hire specialist voice actors to do that, but in terms of content, I don't think it's that expensive or that long to actually for them to be able to do this. So it's actually, from their perspective, once the stories have been written, it's quite straightforward. Yes, that's my take on it. It's a nice thing for people to see as well, because I think even for new players, most of these generation ships are places that are usually within the bubble, and so that are reachable by them quite easily. Even if you don't have a great ship with a huge jump range, you can usually reach all these places. So it's something that people can feel a part of from almost the word go. As long as you pilot your ship, you can get to these places. Slight course correction from me, minute one there, but yeah, we'll keep them flying in a more or less straight line. So rotate the screen a little bit for fun, as I sometimes do. External view for a few seconds. Huge amount nearby as well, that's the thing. But yes, as always, in every place in Elite, there's usually something beautiful or interesting to be found. I mean, it's a place, certainly. I mean, it does require patience often seek these things out. I think that's the thing with Elite generally. I think that's sometimes that's the difference between people often who spend a lot of time looking into it and people who have maybe played a little bit, liked it, but have, maybe otherwise cast it aside, is because the amount of time it takes to do things in Elite is to be fair, is fairly lengthy. I mean, some things can be done fairly fast, but lots of things require quite a lot of time and effort to do. And it's again, it takes a lot of concentration and quite a lot of commitment to get right. It's one of those things. I'd say that it's definitely worth everyone having a go at it. Just because it's fairly cheap to download these days anyway. Horizons particularly, but it's always worth people checking it out because there's so many wonderful things. And even if you just fly around like very basically and just look for beautiful places, within the bubble, that's more than enough reason to have it. And and if you play it like once a couple of times a month, it's still, I say, worth having. It's one of these things. It's like you can have like a minimum amount of involvement in it, beyond obviously mastering the basic skills and be able to fly around and things. And then you can get a great deal out of it still. But obviously to get the most out of it, it probably does require a certain amount of effort and time, and this is true actually. But it's not the work of a moment. Lots of things in the Elite universe, that is certainly true. And I always try to be realistic about these things. It's a game that is for a lot of people, but probably not for everyone. I think it's more accessible to maybe mainstream gaming than a lot of people realise. And I'd say that's definitely the case. It is more accessible to the mainstream than is generally realised, because it's seen in some ways as like a sort of niche or cult game, but quite a big one at that. Because it does numbers that's fairly sort of mainstream game, not like the biggest games like Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever, but the sort of like next tier down really. I was kind of, okay, I'm not an expert in the games industry, I always got the impression it fits in that kind of tier, not the super massive games, but kind of quite big ones still, quite successful ones, that it's considered to be a slightly sort of bit like way Flight Simulators by Microsoft, I suppose. It's a game that is actually quite popular, but at the same time it's considered a bit sort of niche. I'd say actually this is probably more accessible in many ways, in almost every way actually, than Microsoft Flight Simulators, because Flight Simulator is supposed to be ultra realistic. There isn't really an easy access way to get into that, because every control is replicated pretty much. But there is a certain amount of like flight simulators type stuff in Elite, and there is a certain amount of complexity, but it's not as complicated control-wise as Flight Simulator or a lot of other actual flight simulators of aircraft would be. So it's simpler than that, definitely. It's not simple, but it's definitely simpler than and more accessible than things like Microsoft Flight Simulator, but more complex than even a lot of racing games, which can have quite a high level of complexity. I mean, I do like sort of motor racing games too, and those are cool. But those can have quite a high level of complexity, especially in terms of like car setup, etc., and sort of simulator items. But this is slightly more than that, but not like radically more. But definitely less than Flight Simulator would be. Actually, by the sounds of Flight Simulators as a genre in gaming and simulation, Microsoft Flight Simulator is actually considered quite hardcore, I think, by most people. I mean, there are some sims that are even more hardcore, but they're kind of rare. There's not many of them. But I think that's part of the appeal, though. But this is definitely a sort of big, sort of niche or cult game. That's certainly true. That's why it's sort of quite a big, hardcore following. But it's definitely more accessible than most people realise. We're getting quite close now, so I might pull back on the throttle a little bit. Okay, we're not too far, about a minute out now. actually, to be fair, I know it's not going to be too long. This thing about the flight model in the game is fairly predictable. There's some bits that you need to cross your fingers for, but that's not one of them. I think the actual flight model is one of the earlier aspects of Elite that was actually, you know, pretty much good and, well, virtually perfect actually from the time that the game was launched, even at the end of beta, where the people I know that were in that universe at that time. But I bought it just pretty much immediately after launch and started playing it then, so it came pretty much fully formed in terms of flight model. That's one of the things that has always been the most sophisticated about it, and definitely the most effective parts of it. You're right, we're approaching the world that the megaship is in orbit of. World B5. These tend to show up on the scanners relatively quickly. The generation ships are supposed to be found. Yeah. Anything that's a megaship size tends to be fairly straightforward to find. You don't tend to find the generation ships actually appear on the system map, like say a fleet carrier would, or an actual megaship. But okay, this is the world. This is the place. Ah, this is it here. Ah, I've got it now. Bingo. Let's fly. Yeah, it looks like a fairly dull ice world. It's an orbit. It's quite distant out because some of them are in relatively close orbit to their planets, but this one's fairly distant. It's a fairly high orbit. I mean, look on the left how small, how distant looking the planet is. Still, even seemingly dull places can have beauty in their own way. Just got to look at them right. Or under the right lighting. I think most bodies, especially when they're eclipsed, always look quite spectacular. Let's have a look at the core of the ship. Let's prepare to scan. Just have a quick look at the configuration of this. Again, it's a slightly different one to some of the previous. Not radically so, but this main sort of section here has like greater number of these sort of modules than some of the other ones I've seen in recent times. I say I've never been to this particular one before anyway, so the first time for everything. Within scan range, just for some reason it's initiated. Don't know why it's scans an initiated. Maybe I should get slightly closer than I am. I think for some of this is the confusing thing. Some of the data points you can scan at more than 100 meters. I think with this one, it seems to be I think about 100 meters range. I did get within 100 just then. For some reason it's not activating. I don't know why. How odd. Aha, bingo. We have it. Log number 1, here we come. Bingo. And bang. Yeah, within 200 edition for this. Nothing looks. I'll just go to the other side of the ship, might be easier. I'm trying to use like smaller thruster movements at this point rather than just using the throttle. But that's what it's for. Sort of micro movements. Micro thrusting. A bit too much thrust there. As you do. I've been doing these sequentially because it seems that they're designed to be found like that. I don't have to do them in number sequence, but I just thought it might be a good idea to do it like that. From the perspective of the way it's supposed to be found, I think. I don't think it makes any actual difference. So I'll scan lots of other ones completely out of sequence. Then it doesn't make any difference at all. I've not been particularly cautious of my piloting today. Which is unusual. I tend to be slightly on the cautious side on the stream. And more to go. Slight collisions with the structure. That's why the shield is there. The wires. Forgot about these. Too problematic. I think I'll move further back towards the habitation section of the ship. Or the former habitation section of the ship in most cases. Yeah, let's fly between it. Yeah, this is somewhat of a dark area of space. So you can see that little interesting red light. Now, there's interesting speculation on what the hell that little red light is, because it's not any of the locations I just scanned. Let's get closer to that before I start the voice logs again. Right, let's play the logs.
I must admit, sometimes our mission seems futile. It's still difficult to accept that we're the last humans in the galaxy. But who am I to argue with Command? Details regarding the end of humanity are scarce, and discussions of it is forbidden. The rumor is there was some kind of cataclysm. Sol was the first to fall, followed by every inhabited system in the core. Plague, famine, war. It could have been anything. All I know is we're the last vestige of humankind. We must find a new home if our race is to survive. And who knows what would happen without Command? They've guided and protected us for hundreds of years. If I prove my worth, maybe one day they'll ask me to join them. But for now, I'm happy to serve in whatever way I can. Something really weird happened today. I was accompanying Admiral Kerr on a tour of the ship. Actually, it was more a case of pushing his wheelchair while he mumbled about the good old days. Everyone knows the Admiral should have been put out to pasture years ago. He's certainly not dealing with a full deck. Anyway, he said the strangest thing. As we were passing communications, he suggested we send a progress report to Sol. I tried to explain that Sol was gone, but he was insistent. Then he seemed to clam up, as if he'd said something he shouldn't have. He was silent for the rest of the tour. I'm not sure whether or not to mention it to Command. Talk of Sol is forbidden, you know? But I don't want the old man to get in trouble. At his age, who wouldn't be confused? The incident with Admiral Kerr really played on my mind. So I decided to do some digging. I shouldn't have done it, I know, but I just couldn't stop thinking about what he said. I used his command clearance to access the ship's archives. I almost wish I hadn't now. We're not the last bastion of humanity. That was a lie. A deception designed to dupe every man, woman, and child aboard the ship. Our mission should have ended generations ago. But when the ship reached its destination, the planet was found to be uninhabitable. Most people wanted to turn back, but Command wanted to continue and find a new colonizable planet. There was an uprising, which was violently brought to an end. Afterwards, they put out reports that we were the last members of the human race in an effort to keep us under control. It was all a lie. I'm not sure what to do with this information. Would anyone believe me if I told them?
Would they indeed?
I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. But the people had a right to know the truth. I only told a few people I thought could be trusted, but it spread like wildfire. Within hours, Command was faced with an angry mob threatening mutiny, and they responded with overwhelming force. Over the last few days, the ship has been engulfed in conflict. Two factions have emerged. One that wants to return to the core, and one that wants to continue with the mission. People are dying, and it's all my fault. Why didn't I tell them? All I can do now is try to stop the killing before every last person on the ship is wiped out.
Another spooky, dark tale from the depths of space. again, I'm going to guess, because this seems to be an uninhabited ship, that they wiped themselves out. Very close to this side. It does sound a very similar story in many ways to some of the Dynasty expedition. I'm supposed to find sites for evacuation of the elite of humanity to a distant part of the galaxy for an unspecified potential calamity that might happen. I don't think this was connected with the Dynasty expedition itself, because that was way into the hyperspace era. But yeah, it sounds more like obviously an individual sort of human spaceflight mission that went awry. People adapted to the situation in quite an extreme way, and then failed to adapt and killed each other. Yeah, it's not the first grisly ending of these megaships, nor the last. Just in the variation of these biodomes as well, because there is some. I mean, there's some types that are quite simple, but other ones looks like a lot of detail has been put into them. Have another look into this one. See what it has to offer. Yeah, these are like the flashing lights, particularly only more kind of really truly apparent in these sort of very Twilight-ish sort of systems. Should get maybe slightly closer. As close as I can, anyway. Looking deep, it looks like it might be a Parkland type one. Then again, the question goes begging if this is actually a dome that isn't being rotated. The trees look like they're growing normally, so it's like, well, without any extensive gravity, how does that work? Surely they would not grow in a normal way in a zero-G environment. Try another one. This one looks a little different. Looks like it might be a crop related one. Yeah, it looks that way, like a circle of crops. Not a crop circle though. As you know, the stories where people have alleged that these corn circles in the middle of crop fields, or crop circles, whatever you want to call them, are made by alien spacecraft, which seems a little bit unlikely considering that most of the people who make these have come forward and, you know, shown their techniques on TV, so yeah, it's pretty obvious as to what's going on. I mean, I personally think there is obviously alien life out there in the universe. I just haven't found any evidence myself that actually suggests they visited here in the time that the human race has been around. I mean, you never know, in my opinion. It may have been, but I say the evidence of it isn't particularly good. They're interesting anomaly that sometimes that we can't really explain, but they say that's not exactly concrete, it's still an anomaly, therefore unexplained, and I say it's not really some concrete evidence by any stretch. It would be deeply fascinating if we did encounter something that was like some concrete evidence. and how that would change most people's perspective, upon themselves or the universe. And more speculation of that, how people would react. I think maybe the more advanced we become as a civilization, maybe the less shocking it would be. I don't know. Yeah, what I will also be doing in future streams, I will have another go at trying to find a way to get Odyssey working properly for me on this machine. I don't think it's going to ever be particularly high res on this alpha test. I'm trying to at least make it sort of work in a sort of, streamable way, as in the frame rate isn't absolutely abysmal. It doesn't look horribly jerky. Yeah. I have tried a couple of times, and it's become better, but it's still not good enough, I don't think. And it also could have crashed a few times when I was at a certain point, so I just wouldn't do it. As often as I've been trying to, apply to the taxi service, and then I just have kind of issues after that. So it's unfortunate. But, I hope it'll get better. It probably will. The optimization process is far from complete on this. It will get better over time. So what's interesting is I don't actually have the minimum specs. I have above the minimum specs for lots of, the specs that Frontier have set for the alpha test. So it's like, well, if my machine's not running it that well and I've got above minimum specs, like, why are the minimum specs not something? I don't know. It's all a bit weird, really. Unless they're assuming these specs are going to be good for the actual release. In that case, when it's optimized, yeah, I can see how that will work. Okay. I think at this point it would be a good time to have a bit of a break, and I'll return in a few minutes. Okay, right. And we're back in the room. Or back on the ship, as the case may be. Right. We're still here at the lovely Generation ship. Well, not so lovely if you find out what's happened on board. Yeah, Generation ship Phanes or Phanes. I'm not sure what there's a mythological reference about that or not. It's not one I'm really that familiar with. But here we are. I'm about to say it's one of a whole list of different mega ships that exist within the playable game in Elite. There's some also interesting ones like Odysseus I've been to before. There's a whole bunch of things. Spear of Hope we've been to already. Yeah, there's quite a few of them actually. That one's like Venusian, the other one, but I will check for some of those out, ones I haven't seen in the not too distant future. I think the Thetis might be the most spectacular location, definitely, because of the close orbit of the planet, or fairly close orbit of the planet, so it looks pretty big. The Odysseus is not too similar in that regard. Yes, actually, there may be an even more interesting one than this. Bear with me for just a moment. I will just confirm what I have already been thinking about the Generation ship Atlas. Okay. I think it might be a good idea to go to one more of these, possibly. Yeah, why not? Everyone loves a Generation ship. How the actual galactic map will turn on? Oh, good, thank you. Okay, let's go here. Looks like I have visited the system before at some point. Oh yes, and there's the usual fleet carrier, ready and waiting. Let's go here and see what we can find. Just away from the ship. Goodbye, Generation ship Phanes. You have been most intriguing. I like that word. You probably know this by now. 2 jumps to drift. Yeah, great. I wonder if that's a real world star. It sounds like kind of, by naming convention, the kind of thing they might have given to a real astronomical, international astronomical union approved name for the star. To look that one up. If anyone knows, do tell me in the chat. Saying recently I'll probably start using a webcam in the near future when they've actually got it sorted out properly and it isn't at a rigorous angle, and it actually sort of is all sort of synced up with my equipment. I think I've got it so close to this. I think it's a large giant star anyway, so scooping across is probably a bit too optimistic. That's better. for a second. And then we'll be on the merry way. Yeah, it's only one jump left anyway. I think one of the general sort of, I don't know, expectations, aspirations maybe of the player base is to have more of these sorts of crafted and locations that could be interacted with within the game that are sort of planetary locations, spacecraft, etc. Now, for those of you who don't see one of these before, what you see there is the ejection cone of a white dwarf. It looks slightly similar to that of a neutron star, but the matter is being ejected from it in these two cones to the left and to the right. As you see where the sort of matter then starts to disperse and become less dense at the edges of it, but it's this wonderful blue-white colour. Now, the exclusion zone of white dwarf, something you don't really want to hit if you can possibly avoid it, because these are not nice places, but you can get a boost from these if you actually charge yourself up, but I prefer neutron stars and I'm not going to deal with this case in the white dwarf. I just thought it was a nice place to have a look at. Right, let's look for our generation ship, Atlas, and let's go visit it. It's an interesting place to park a generation ship, but I suppose they can be parked anywhere. Was originally intending to save this Atlas trip maybe until the next stream, but it seemed too good to not do now while I'm in the groove for generation ships. And see these sort of fascinating locations. This one very close to the ever spectacular neutron star. Not like quite as neat as I intended, but it'll do. Okay, and let us scan. Biodomes in different locations. And we'll look at that a bit more in a moment. This has 5 uplinks, so it's a bit longer. That beautiful blue trail in the background. Between the wires. Yep. It's quite a good sized ship for this because it's not too large and you can fit into space. These bigger ships would have trouble, so we have trouble finding an appropriate gap for it anyway. See, there's many more rings to this one. Some of the other biodomes, the green parts are attached to them. Gives a look of slightly more sophistication in many ways, or at least a bigger population. The other side, yeah, it's probably the other side I'll have to go to access it properly. Yeah, I thought so. Beautiful place for it there. 100%. Okay, next one. So, discovered 1, 2. Shot slightly. My exuberance to get somewhere. Right. It's all going well. Yeah, they say more sort of smaller thruster movements than their sort of bigger throttle movements like I normally would. Which is where the other side of that is now. So I think every one of these generations has a slightly different configuration. These are not going to be all in the same place, which is good. It's a little bit more, say, sense of realism to it. There are going to be differences. And the final one, Blink 4. Ooh, that doesn't sound so good. I should move around with this. So in these conditions you have to think like more like a spacecraft pilot than an aircraft one. Say through Super Cruise flight, this craft handles very much like an aircraft. But it's under these sort of normal space maneuvers. You have to think more in a way the spacecraft would, and like Newtonian kind of thrusting, you know, you thrust in one direction to go in another. Final one. And let's see what the story holds. I want to move slightly further away. Just crashed into something. I'll leave it here. It's a good place to park it. While we listen to the voice logs coming through. Right, voice log 1. Here we go.
The captain told the crew the bad news. They've known for months now, but until today it's been on a need-to-know basis. Now it's out there. We can't stop the ship. I remember telling the captain about the fault, a manufacturing issue that no one else had detected. I felt responsible. After all, I'm the ship's engineer. Like my father and his father before him. All he said was, "We'll fix it." Now months on, we're nearing our destination and no closer to finding a solution. But in lieu of a fix, I believe I have an alternative. After all the debates, all the meetings and the arguing, the ship's council has finally approved the plan. So we're all systems go. We're rigging the emergency pods and the life ships to carry as much useful equipment as possible. The command crew have made all the course adjustments they can to get the ship close to the target. After that, we'll launch all the pods as the ship passes by. With any luck, they will all land safely, and we can finally call this mission a success. There's just one catch. Someone has to stay behind to launch the pods. That person will be stuck on board. One life for many seems like a good deal. Jean will think I'm crazy, but I volunteered to be that person. Funny, Jean's always telling me I need to step up to the challenge more to prove I have what it takes. I'm not sure this is what she had in mind. After weeks of preparation and drills, we're finally getting close. Only a few more days to launch. All adjustments have been made and our trajectory's looking good. I've been getting the engineers to double and triple check everything. I want this to go as smoothly as possible. We've had our teething problems, which I guess were to be expected. After all, this ship wasn't meant to do this without stopping. I'm getting nervous. If this fails... There's another thing. Jean's pregnant. She doesn't know that I know. I found the test in the bathroom. With all that's happening, I guess she doesn't know how to tell me. Maybe she's afraid that it'll affect my judgment. She might have been right about that. I was gonna tell her tonight that I'm the one. I'm not sure if I can anymore. She'll want to stop me, or worse, she'll want to stay behind as well. I can't let that happen.
Pod 12, launch. Pod 13, begin launch procedures. Pod 14, what are you doing? Pod 14, please acknowledge. Come in, do you read me? Abort. I repeat, abort. You were not cleared to... Explosion in Bay 14, emergency. I repeat, this is an emergency. All remaining pods, begin launch.
Tom, where are you? The pilot, he's saying he's going to leave without you. What's happening?
We've got to go now! This is Chief Engineer Tom Edwards to the pilot of Life Ship 003. This is a direct order. Secure all passengers and launch now.
Tom, the ship's leaving. Where are you?
Jean, sweetheart, you have to listen to me. I'm sorry, it's the only way. I couldn't tell you before. Someone needs to stay on board and make sure everyone gets out of here.
I don't... Why? Why you?
It's my responsibility. Listen to me. You're gonna be okay. Both of you.
How? How did you know?
It's not important. Just know everything is gonna be okay. I love you. We're out of communication range now. I've
been sitting here for hours, listening to the crackle of the dead signal. Thought I was ready for this. Thought I had made peace with it. But knowing that that was the last time I was gonna hear her voice makes it so much worse. The captain said they're gonna name the first settlement after me. Nice gesture, I guess. But I really didn't do it for them. I did it for her. And the life she's carrying. This was the right thing to do. There's no telling when or if this ship will ever stop. We had our shot, and we took it. I'd gladly do it again. My kid's not gonna grow up in some tin can floating aimlessly in space. They're gonna grow up with dirt between their toes and a sky above their head.
There you are. Sad in its own way, maybe not as sad as some of the others. I mean, we don't know what happened to all, the population of the ship that did evacuate it. But maybe they got away and founded a settlement somewhere and had a good life. Sad for the guy and his family, though. But not by any means the darkest story told by these generation ship computers. But yeah, this is the most, I'm gonna say, dramatic of all the locations that I've seen generation ships in. Just flying back a bit to get a better perspective. Still down a bit more. A good place for another shot as well. Now that's cool. Best possible view here. I like that a lot. Yeah, where the cones are at either side of that very densely packed neutron star. It seems the ship finally did come to a rest, and it was here. Whether that by a malfunction or the guy managed to slow it down, or did just this body, by its density cause such a disruption to its trajectory that it just came to this position. Either way, this is really quite amazing. There's always that certain eeriness or sort of spookiness to the ejector cones of white dwarfs and neutron stars, but then you add the sort of also quite spooky nature of the generation ships. This is slightly eerie but definitely memorable place. Just sit back and watch this for a while. Let's see those sort of central rings rotating. I think all 4 of them are rotating as well, which is the first time I've seen that on a generation ship. And one of them has biodomes attached to it. So I can see that one could sustain gravitational field, or enough force to simulate a gravitational field to grow plants in. Actually, that's an amazing shot. I'm going to take a higher res shot. Pre-warning for anyone who's photosensitive, this is going to flicker quite a bit. That's a side effect sometimes of taking a high-res image. It does that kind of weird flickering thing with the frames a bit. But yeah, it's an extraordinary image. Out of the many extraordinary images of Elite. The usual sort of spectacular all-seeing eye of Barnard's Loop seems like almost a sort of a background minor detail here. Because the scene obviously isn't static, you still have little lights coming off in the rotation of those rings. So it's sort of subtly moving, subtly changing. Yeah, I do like this place. I don't think I've actually visited here before. Many of the generation ships, sure I have visited those, but not to all of them. Yeah, for those of you just joining us, welcome. I'm Commander Yannick, and this is my Elite stream, and we're at the generation ship Atlas. Astounding place. To anyone in the chat who's there, are there any particular places or things that you are intrigued about in Elite Dangerous but have never been to, or have never been able to reach them or access them properly, that you would like me to investigate in a future episode? A future stream, I should say. It's not quite an episode, I'm not a YouTuber. It's all good though. Yeah, this location is definitely up there. I would recommend it amongst the generation ships. Hear the noises in the background. I'm gonna have one final sort of swoop through this place before I leave it. To see what else there is. I appreciate it. Just, yeah, you hear the different noises as well. So the detail of the sound proximity where the alarms are going. Sometimes you hear something crash against the shields when it's not actually problematic, they say. Just fly through the core of the ship towards the edges of it. Yeah, it's a very bright light that's emanating there. From the white dwarf, especially when you're close to it. And further out in the system, it's not really a bright light for the whole system, but it is that sort of ghostly light when you're this close to it. Actually, this seems like probably the best place to be leaving this week's stream. I'll be winding this down shortly, and my gratitude goes out to everyone who has watched today or commented in any way in the chat. Thank you all. If you like what I do, please follow. And if you like what I do even more, please drop a donation in the about. And thank you everyone, and until next time, fly safe, fly dangerous, whatever you do, have fun. See you soon.